So this is me finishing a tier 60 at level 72 with Incinerate.
What year is it?
Hello my fellow sorcerers then, and welcome to Season 4. And I don't know about you guys, but I am actually having a lot of fun, and I have not been able to say that about Diablo 4 for a while. And I'm especially excited to be a sorcerer, and I mean not for just the usual reasons, because as we all know it is the best class, but because Season 4 is looking to give us the greatest build diversity we have ever had, and so much more than the other classes. And basically, we're going to have a lot of fun theory crafting to talk about. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's kick things off with this. The best build for transitioning into the best build. Basically, in a sentence, this is not the best sorcerer build of the whole season, but it is the best sorcerer build to let you get the best sorcerer build as easily and as quickly as possible, and I hope that makes sense, and it really is what you need right now on, like, what, day 2 of the whole season, where I'm sure a lot of you aren't even in Torment yet. What do I mean by that? Well, we are going to talk Incinerate, new Incinerate, that is in Season 4, using the new Split Beam aspect and the buffed Incinerate aspect, on top of a few key synergies that are now possible that actually make this, yeah, kinda nutty cuckoo bananas. Now, I do need to add the addendum of for Incinerate, but the fact that we can even viably play it in such an effective way is astounding, and it is effective. As I said, a tier 60 at level 72. I am absolutely blasting through the start of the pit, as you can see, and hell, even a solo Duriel at level 73 with Incinerate. But notice on this Duriel one thing, not outrageous DPS, of course not, but he can't kill me, and that is really the secret sauce here. What this build will let you do is progress into Torment at really early levels. I did it at level 50, and it will let you start farming mobs that are way above you, that should be way too difficult, that should be one-shotting you and not blink an eye. The reason being is it's just a super rock-solid build that most importantly comes online easy, fast, and without too much fuss. You don't need to farm any uniques. In fact, you don't need to farm much at all. You get given 2 of the key aspects for free by the season journey. This lets you just immediately 0 to 100 get powerful enough to, from said level 50, operate in Torment and absolutely speed smash farm the actual build you're going for. It is the perfect transitionary power that we need, because, well, our good builds need a lot of uniques, they need a lot of things online, a lot of things farmed, and you can't just do it. If I'd come to you today and said, hey, so, step 1, get into Torment, and grab yourself a Fractured Winter Glass, here we go, Frozen Orb, you'd be like, okay, great, but, like, that's a lot of farming, I'm getting my ass kicked in Torment, what do I do in the meantime? This is what you do in the meantime. It is powerful, it is fun, and most importantly, it gets the job done with no fuss, easily, and punches way above its weight, and will give you a really comfortable cruise control way to farm whatever given true endgame build you're after in Torment as soon as possible. And it's proven to be an absolute champion for that, and I cannot recommend it enough. So without further ado then, let's get into this early Torment transitioning destroyer of a new Incinerate in Season 4, and it now really is actually able to stand tall as a properly viable sorcerer build, and it does have a little bit of potential to go further too if we did an ultra endgame version, but of course this is not that. So, let's do this. In a plot twist none of you saw coming, we're gonna start with the skill tree, and it's going to begin with another plot twist that none of you saw coming. 2 points in Firebolt, though it is not for an enchantment slot, at least not most of the time. Moving on then, we want to fill up Incinerate, of course we do, and then get Enhanced Incinerate, and finally Greater. The Immobilize is wonderful, both for enemies, not stabbing you in the face, and for doing more damage. Now, at this point, I immediately need to give you an alternative option. If you are doing something particularly difficult, or if you're soloing a uber unique boss, or just a unique boss, a ladder boss, then swapping from Greater Incinerate to Destructive, getting that 30% free DR, and just standing your ground and killing them, this talent right here is what lets you just face tank Duriel at level 72 without all your resist done, and it is wonderful. So that's when you put that on, both are certainly viable. Then we get one in Fireball, over to Enhanced, and then Greater, and then yes, this becomes our first enchantment slot, so when things are done melting, they start exploding, and that's very good for us. Then we move on to our defensives, where we want Flame Shield, Enhanced Flame Shield, and then finally Shimmering. Remember, this is all about surviving and just standing there burning, and this does a lot for that. As do the usual, of course, Teleport for the mobility, but then yes, the DR after doing so. 3 out of 3 in Glass Cannon, we are so tanky, so we may as well have the free damage, and then we get Ice Armor. Now, technically, you can go in Enhanced, you can take a point out of maybe Shimmering if you are surviving fine, get the extra mana regen, but very quickly this build becomes completely self-sustaining, as Incinerate is honestly quite cheap, so it's not super necessary. Then we put the 1 point in Elemental Attunement, just so we can reset these, as our Hydra will be critting a fair amount, even though we're not focusing on crit at all. Over to said Hydra, where we want 5 out of 5, as this actually pumps out quite a bit of damage. After doing a lot of testing, I have settled on Hydra over Lightning Spear, as the extra dot from the summoned Hydra is really, really nice, and just the consistent damage of having 2 of them up, because it then lets us play Conjuration Mastery to always have 2 stacks of it. That's worth it by itself. So yes, get your full Hydra, and over to Summoned, maximum lucky hit, we want as much as we can get in this build, and then 3 out of 3 Conjuration Mastery. So we always get 6% multiplicative damage, always 6% movement speed, and always 12% mana regen. Then 1 in Align, and then 1 in Protection. Again, we are very, very, very tanky, so just getting the barrier is fine enough, and then 3 out of 3 in your mana shield will spend enough mana to have this up enough that it is worth it, though you can spend these points elsewhere if you're surviving fine. Over to here, where we just want 3 out of 3 inner flames for another 9% multiplicative, and then lastly we want Firewall with Enhanced and then Mages, and this makes up our second enchantment slot. We'll have everything exploding when it dies, summoning even more fire, and generally having a great time. Then we get Inferno along with Prime and then Supreme, giving you that mana break to refill. The positioning, everyone, is lovely, and just an extra damage over time is always nice. Get your Fiery Surge, mainly so we can get 3 out of 3 buffed Soulfire, which is just wonderful, and one of the reasons this works so well now, and then also 3 out of 3 Endless Pyre. We have lots of burning being applied, and they're going to be burning for a long, long time. Lastly, talking of lots of burning being applied, we do want Combustion for just the raw 20% multiplicative, but the additional 2% does start to add up. Now, if you are facing a single target enemy, like you're soloing Duriel, and you can be bothered, then swap out Fireball enchant temporarily for Firebolt enchant. It will get applied by the hits of the Hydra, and give you an extra burning damage over time to help trigger lucky hit and do all of the good things that you want it to do, but you don't have to. It's obviously annoying to swap that out each time, but if you really want to min-max and you're fighting a boss single target, put this disenchant on. Otherwise, for general farming, cleaving through mobs, fireball is the way, and there we have it. Next up then, let's talk your gear, your aspects, your affixes, and all of that lovely stuff. So, the by far and away most important thing is we want a two-handed staff. Attack speed just isn't a factor when we're here channeling a lovely beam, and getting the double strength both aspect and tempering is very worth it. And on said staff, you want Flamethrower's aspect. This way, not only do we get the triple split of Incinerate, which makes it so much better for covering large areas and cleaving through enemies, it also, you know, makes each beam do 160% up to 170 multiplicative more damage. This is huge and is one of the main two reasons why Incinerate is actually not just viable, but really good as this stopgap build right now. The second most important aspect, and you need to have this on your amulet, is Conflagration. We now just get more burning damage while channeling Incinerate, and it's a lot more burning damage, but we also get this extra explosion from each enemy that you are affecting. This is really, really big. When we do have a group actually being blasted by the Incinerate, you see that explosion instantly. They're all ticking massively as it goes off. This initial pop that happens spreads to each other, and it adds so much damage, and that cannot be overstated. Past that then, on one of your rings, you want to have Incendiary. This will give you mana back when we lucky hit with Pyromancy. That's going to be happening a lot, and it pretty much, you know, solves it for you. I can just sit here channeling Incinerate for, well, ever, really. Yes, I'm going to slowly go down, and then it's going to trigger the lucky hit, and we're going to go straight back up, and this is what happens. It's super easy to solve mana with Incinerate, which is another reason it's so friendly for a early Torment build when you don't have access to perfect gear. In any case, you will also reach the point eventually where you don't even need Incendiary, at which point you can whack on something like Conceited and be fine. Then we want Engulfing Flame, so we deal more burning damage below the 50 and the increased if we've got more. This isn't super important and it's not super good. It's mainly here for bosses that will spend a lot of time below half health, and there isn't really many other better options, at least at this stage. Then over on gloves, we have Inner Calm. This is actually phenomenal for Incinerate for, like, obvious reasons. We're going to be standing still a lot. We're going to be tanking, we're not going to care, and then we're going to start doing 30% multiplicative more damage for the privilege. It works wonders. It really, really does. On your helmet then, we want extra lucky hit with a barrier. We want as much lucky hit as possible in this build. It cannot be overstated, and this is a nice way to get that, as we'll be barriered up a lot of the time. Then you want a source of armor. I've gone with Juggernaut, so it's just here and permanent, and I don't have to worry or mess around with Disobedience. Remember that you are aiming for about 9,800-ish armor. That's the new cap, and then you're done. So if you're going too far over, you can pull back armor from somewhere else. So this is why that I'm not going to be putting skulls in my jewelry, because I just don't need the extra armor. Whereas I could enchant away the plus armor affix on these gloves, and then put skulls in my jewelry and kind of achieve the same balance. It's harder to specifically tell you what to wear with armor, because you have to, well, you know, figure it out for yourself a little bit, but basically have about 10,000 armor, and you are good. And Juggernaut is a nice way to just be there. Then we have just a little bit of extra defensive help. Basically, just put a defensive aspect of choice. I've gone with the barrier just to play into the extra lucky hit. You're going to be hitting elites all the time. It's nice, but this can be anything that you want it to be. And then I actually have really found myself enjoying concussive strikes. Getting that daze while channeling the Incinerate, the enemy's now dazed coming towards you, doing that extra damage, it's been really really effective for me. Again, this one isn't critical, and it's another reason this build is so good and easy to just put online. All you literally need is flamethrowers on your staff and conflagration on your amulet. Go nuts. But yeah, this has worked out nicely for me. Now, if you are lucky enough to start getting uniques coming in, then you want to drop this, and you want to use Esu's Heirloom. Now, the reason we do this, even though we don't care about Critical Strike, is to play into a legendary Paragon node we will be getting later, so yes, get this on. By far more important though, we want to drop Engulfing Flames, and we want to drop Incendiary, as we will have our mana problem solved, and ideally you want to put on X-Files. Of course, it's a burning damage over time build, so big pops of boom, and then, of course, Tal Rashes, the just best ring for sorcerers and arguably in the game, outside of maybe New Starless Skies. So this is the kind of ideal look that you're going for early on, and that will work out nicely for you. You really do start to get some serious explosions as you see X-Files doing its thing, and like just the immediate 160,000 ticks of Incinerate, there really is some mean damage here. When it comes to your gems then, you want health in your armor, you want yourself amethyst in your weapons for the more damage over time. I have not killed enough world bosses yet to actually put slots in this, so typical. And then in your jewelry, for now you will likely want all resist, as we do want to get these all to 70% as soon as possible. Harder to do lower level with less intelligence, less paragon points of course, but evenly getting them all up as much as we can is helped massively by the diamonds in your jewelry, especially when we can reach the armor cap without the skulls. So that's to think about there. Then when it comes to affixes, you will still be changing gear a fair amount, but generally speaking, lucky hit. You just want as much lucky hit as you can get. Both my rings, before I swap to uniques, lucky hit everywhere and anywhere. Past that, you want to be getting mana management, things like resource cost reduction, which I also have on my staff here. And, of course, tempering will play into that too, but beyond that, because we are going for this tanky you can't kill me even though I'm way below your level in Torment, anything like maximum life, general intelligence is phenomenal, getting the armor cap, of course, and that will give you a nice little springboard to go off. Then you can just get things like, I don't know, plus damage like I have on one of these rings, plus burning damage over time, that kind of thing, anything that just generically makes you do more damage. We're not really into vulnerable here, so that doesn't come up, and we don't care about crit. Then we have ourselves tempering to look at. So when it comes to the weapon slot, what we want is pyromancy augments, and you want incinerate size so the beams are bigger and they can more easily cover more enemies, and that'll get it done. Anywhere that has an offensive slot, then you want to have pyromancy finesse, and you ideally want to get fire damage or fire damage over time. Then when it comes to your defensive slots, what we want is worldly endurance for more maximum life. Then, when we go on utility, what we want is natural fortune, worldly fortune, to have chances to immobilize, ideally to stun, freeze, slow. All of these CCs piling up actually make a huge difference to incinerate, because you're just standing there channeling, so you can be quite vulnerable if you don't have all the defenses online, and this really helps out. And the extra mobilize is nice too, on top of the incinerate immobilize. Then, when it comes to the mobility slot, what you want is just raw movement speed, so you can farm as fast as possible, and you can get that from either natural motion or sorcerer motion. And then when it comes to resource, what you're after is worldly stability, and either resource generation or resource cost reduction. The chance to restore resource is fine too, but the other two are much better. Then when it comes to your amulet specifically, the two you want to choose are offensive and resource. Other than that then, you are ready to move on. When it comes to how to pilot this, it's very straightforward. Blast things of incinerate and then don't stop until they die. Well, that's not actually true. See, the amount of damage you get out of just a little bit of Incinerate being channeled is huge, so you don't want to waste your time by over-channeling. So if I've teleported through the dungeon, arrived at this pack of enemies, I'll give them a little bit of a blast, and then I can move on and just watch them explode behind me. Of course, you got to get a little bit of a feel for exactly how long you need to do it, but you will get there, and it will speed you up massively and really mitigate the sort of stationary nature of Incinerate. Now, of course, we are also doing Hydra, so generally as you're walking through, just keep placing the double of them ahead, and then join them with some Incinerates, and then we can move on, and they will all just slowly burn and die. As I said, we just leave the situation. You can use Flame Shield while channeling Incinerate, which is just an extra damage over time applied, but also, you know, makes you immune and doesn't interrupt the channel, so it's really nice to keep going. If a huge pack of elites has jumped on your face, just Flame Shield and keep channeling. Teleport to just get to places fast, and then Ice Armor if you're ever in an emergency situation. Then for your Inferno, it's just to control a large group of enemies, or if you need the mana restore and relief from the infinite mana. Always keep your 2 Hydra up, so we always have the 2 stacks of Conjuration Mastery, and then you really are good to go. And things really do add up quickly when it comes to this build. If we go over to a boss training dummy real quick, like so, and ideally you do want to hug, it is the way to go. Just have everything on top of you, burning everywhere, especially for the firewalls as well that get summoned from the enchantment and lucky hit. You don't want the boss moving out of them, so we have arrived on said boss. We get both of these, and then we are off, and you can see just how quickly it all adds up, melts, and destroys. So, that being said, let's Paragon. Follow me point for point like so, bearing in mind we are in the earlier game and we still need as much elemental resist to cap out as possible at this stage, which is why we're going off here instead of the usual up here through this non-physical damage. That said, we do of course want to get Elementalist, and then we'll go left up through the all resist, the second all resist magic, and then into the glyph slot where we will find Elementalist. Technically, this isn't as peak as it is in other builds because we don't have the cold aspect, but we still get that 10% multiplicative, and the important thing is here increasing the potency of elemental balance and erudite with its main effect. So get it activated, get elemental balance activated, and then go up through the all resist, grabbing this extra all resist too, as it is increased as well by this glyph. Then all the way up into the heart of Sorcerer, that is Enchantment Master, and head straight on to get elemental balance, and then to the glyph slot where reinforced is waiting for us. That DI with a barrier, which we always have, is lovely, as is the increase to both the elemental balance and erudite nodes once this gets to level 15, which I will be working on. Then we get it active as best we can, and then head up here centrally to grab both Ruinous and then Elementalist again. These 3 here are such a huge power spike, especially early on for Sorcerer. Then we want to head up and right into the expected Burning Instinct, given the build that we are playing. Initially go down and get yourself Cinders, get to the glyph slot where we'll find Territorial. We're standing still, channeling Incinerate, so the DR against close enemies is very important, and the extra damage to close enemies is also very important. Then we want to head down and get Smoldering Embers too. Eventually they will all activate their extra bonuses, but again, lower level, low Paragon points, so we don't have all the stats rolling in. Then we want to go up to the middle and get Kindling along the way as we continue on to Keeper of Flames before finally getting to Burning Instinct for a huge amount of multiplicative burning damage increase, and this is why you run Esu's Heirloom if you have them, as the extra crit damage will translate into extra burning damage. Then we would move on down here and right into the next board, which would end up being the Searing Heat board, as you might imagine, over to the extra fire damage, and this is all well and good. If you want an extra glyph here, Tactician is a very solid choice, but presumably you won't get much into this board before you start to transition into a later build, so I am happy to leave it there. And there we have it then, ladies and gentlemen. Sorcerer Incinerate, leveling / early torment / best for farming the build you're actually after that takes a lot more work than this does, but the actual power it has relative to how easy it is to get it online is absurd, and more than anything, it is just so nice for Incinerate to be genuinely, unironically good. I cannot wait to bring you more and more builds. Next up, of course, as you might imagine, we'll be looking in a certain frosty circle direction. Hopefully at max level 100, I am going to continue blasting, as they say. Like if you enjoy this, subscribe and hit the bell for more. Consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.